So have you been thinking about importing some tropical houseplants, but you're unsure about the process and you're not wanting to go into the whole thing blind? Stick with me, and in this video I'll dive into the 13 things that you just need to be aware of before you place your purchase. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So today is a topic that a lot of you have actually asked me about, mainly because you've seen that I've placed a few orders so far in the last kind of year and a half really with kind of companies like Ecuagenera, and I've imported plants over. I've actually been talking to some other import companies, and I will dive into that later on in this video to give you some of my thoughts. And you're always sitting there going, but I would love to get some imports, and I see what you're bringing in and it's really cool, but I'm unsure. So I thought I'd make this video for you to just kind of tell you things that I've learned over this period in terms of what to expect, certain things to be aware of, just to make the process a bit more calm. Because a lot of the times, part of the stress and the anxiety is the unknown. Hopefully I will dive into enough topics today to make the unknown known. So without further ado, because we've got a lot to discuss and I don't want this to be a massively long video, let's dive into the first one. So the first thing that you're going to need to remember, delays will happen. It's inevitable. Sometimes, I'll give you an example, the Ecuagenera example is a good one, where you'd place an order and you're sitting there going, you know what, we deliver to your country once a month for the UK, for instance. And then you reach out to them after you place the order and it's just like, oh yeah, but we're not delivering this month, it's next month. So be aware of that. If you want a plant now, importing is not the way to go. There will always be a wait period, and it would make sense because the actual company that you're buying from needs to prepare the plants for something called Phytosanitary Certification, or Phyto. So let's dive into Phyto. What is Phyto? Phyto is something that will happen, if I'm not mistaken, at the country of origin. So again, using the Ecuagenera example, in Ecuador, where they will have people, usually government officials, basically, that will come in and inspect a whole bunch of plants, basically. So another reason why sometimes you get a delay is because if you'd imagine, a lot of these companies, they can't have somebody coming in every single day to check one order, two orders, three orders. It would make sense for them to hold a few orders back, 50, 100, 200 orders, to have a big enough selection of plants. So when they get that government official to come over, make sure that all the plants are kind of ticked off and said, yes, they are fine for shipping. They are safe to move to a different country. It makes sense. They would want to kind of aggregate that all together. Now, I know with a lot of the kind of international companies, when you're buying or importing plants, basically, a lot of the times, I think predominates a lot of the Asian kind of companies will say, do you want to add in the optional phyto? Trust me, at least in the UK, it ain't optional. Spend, because you've just spent £200, £300, £400 potentially on buying a whole bunch of plants that you want that you can't find over here. And if you don't get the phyto and you cheap out on the £20, £50 that might be that they're charging you as the consumer for the phyto, then what might happen is they could end up in the UK or wherever they're coming into your own country. They check it, there's no phytosanitary certification, and they just go, you get a message saying, really sorry, your package had to be destroyed. It didn't have the accurate paperwork. And at that point, the seller would be like, we didn't buy the phyto, so it's not our fault. So always, always, always get the phyto. They get, again, the example of Ecuagenera that I can talk to from a bit more experience. You don't even have to worry about phytosanitary certification. It's already included in the price, which in my opinion should be standard. When you're importing from anywhere, they can hike up their prices a bit, and just make sure that you don't have to worry about having to engage with that phytosanitary certification. Now, the little thing that I alluded to earlier on, I did have an Asian country's seller, relatively large actually, and I'm not going to name and shame here, who was trying to say, look, could you do a review video for us? We'll send you some free plants and that's fine. And choose your plants that you want. And then at some point they were just like, do you have a DEFRA certification? I think it was DEFRA. If not, I will correct myself at the top, which is for the UK here, something that only commercial growers would have. And the little story that I'm going to give here is I had a friend who, because she really wanted those plants, she did this, and it's an online form that you can kind of fill in and all of these things. And it's not meant for individuals. And then I think a year later, she didn't think anything of it. She got the plants. A year later, she had a knock on the door from DEFRA, this governmental body, coming to inspect her conditions and the plants. And I'm just sitting there going, they laughed it off, and she kind of explained it to them as well. But I'm just sitting there going, so that did not happen with the company that wanted me to do this, because I'm just sitting there going, I even asked the question, is this something that my viewers, if I was going to present something like your company to them, would have to do, because there's all of these other issues. Funnily enough, at that point, they stopped talking to me. So I'm just sitting there going, I will never give you my money, because it shouldn't be something that you have to do. I don't know the kind of ways that other companies like Equigenera or I think Tropicals might get around that. They might just have a specific retailer in the UK that they work with, and they do all the DEFRA through them, and that's why sometimes they might ship your plants to that location because they've got all the kind of correct paperwork, and then they'll ship it to you the next day. So it's things like that that you always just need to be aware of, and it's something that's not discussed enough, and I think it should be. And whilst we're on the subject of couriers, the other thing that you need to remember with these things, as with buying anything online, the plant might arrive to your country and then the courier has issues, or the courier holds on to it for a bit too long. And those are all things that you're going to need to kind of expect. Like it's any other shipment that you might have coming in, even domestically in your own country, there could be delays with the courier. So those plants that are already quite stressed and coming in from abroad, be aware that you might need to do rehab. And I will clarify this for both kind of domestic sellers and the international kind of sellers that you might be importing from. There's only so much they can do. The moment that that plant leaves their store, their business, and travels towards you, that part is the courier's responsibility. They can only do so much. But a lot of the times, a lot of these companies will be understanding that things like this would happen. Reach out to them and see if you can come to an agreement, especially if you've received a plant that is essentially dead. So talk to them, and they should be able to kind of advise on how you proceed. Trust me, they have had situations where this has happened in the past. They will know better. So the stress doesn't have to be with you. Just reach out to them and they will give you the best advice that they can. And we're talking about near death because of courier delays. Root rot is a thing that you're going to have to potentially deal with. I've done several videos, and I'll link up a playlist that I've done of all my different unboxings. And the most recent unboxing that I did, and again, I'll link that separately at the top so you can see it, I specifically bought it in the middle of the winter because I wanted to see how the plants were going to do, which led to moments like these. Do I think this is salvageable? Yes, but say this as another leaf falls down. The root's looking like, what the root's looking like. Please tell me they're okay. Oh, I like this. I like this a lot. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It will be fine. Maybe not. Maybe I spoke too soon. Ooh, maybe I spoke too soon about it being okay. It's got a lot of leaves. I don't think all of the leaves are going to make it. If I have made a mistake, I am sure the comments are going to be roasting me now, going, you got the wrong one again, dum-dum. And I'm just like, sorry. I tried. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now, funny as those moments might be, they can be a bit disconcerting, especially if it's your first order and you're getting plants where they don't have the best root system, or half of the root system or all of the root system is gone to root rot. What I always say when you're importing, and this might sound harsh, assume that you're going to be starting with a plant that is just a cutting with no roots, and you're going to lose all the roots. And if you get plants that have got healthy roots or partially healthy roots, bonus. But assume the price that you are paying for, and a lot of the times it's still cheaper than what you would find in your own country, is for an unrooted cutting. And then if they all arrive and they've all got perfect roots, a bonus. But it makes sense that root rot would happen because of stress due to shipping, weather conditions if you're doing it in the winter, all of these things, handling from the couriers as well, these things will all add into that process of stressing out the plant enough that it could cause root rot as well. The conditions might be too moist. You don't know how long potentially the parcel, even with all the paperwork, even with the phytos, even with the DEFRAs here in the UK, it might have been stuck in customs for days because it's in an order of priority when things come in, when things will get checked. So, and even though it's perishable, even though it's plants, and they know that a lot of the custom departments, they will still need to go in an order of priority as well. So bear that in mind. Root rot is a thing that can and will happen. Just be prepared for it. And part of the reason, again, one of the things that you want to be checking and making sure that you're clearing your plants off properly, linked to the customs, linked to the phyto, linked to the DEFRA aspects of things, is a lot of the times in order for these plants to be shipped over to you in a way that is acceptable by your own country, they are heavily sprayed down with pesticides. The roots need to be sterilized. It puts a lot of stress on the plant, again, potentially leading to root rot. But the other thing that you need to remember is potentially when you get your plant in, it's a good idea to literally, usually a lot of the times if you're importing, they'll be bare root. So taking them into the shower and with not cold, freezing cold water, but kind of tepid water, make sure that you are rinsing the plant off entirely, including the roots. So any kind of chemical that was used in order for the phyto to be granted can get washed off as much as possible because you don't necessarily want that still being there on your plant. And then talking about the root rot of it all, talking about the pesticide, you need to kind of consider things like rehabbing. You're going to potentially have to rehab these plants. Even if the plant is in perfect condition, the roots are okay and everything like that, they've still been through some level of stress to get over to you. So you're going to need to rehab that plant, even more so if you're dealing with root rot. And I've done a whole video on root rot and I will link it at the top as well. So making sure that you are prepared to rehab these plants. So it's a good idea to kind of be ready for when the plants are going to arrive. I joked in my last video that I got the clear pots. I put in all the holes. I made sure that I had the growing media ready, all of these things. And I'll be completely clear with you, when I get, and obviously because I sometimes have to do unboxing videos as well, but when I get a parcel like that coming in, it's almost a full day affair, making sure the plants are removed, filming an unboxing, which you might not be doing, but then making sure I'm taking pictures just for security in case anything goes wrong, that I can send it over to the actual seller to kind of say, look, this and this and this and this. Then making sure that I am rinsing those plants, rehabbing those plants, potting them up, making sure that all of those things are done properly takes me usually a full day to receive and prepare that order to come into my home. So bear that in mind. And I touched on it briefly, but cold damage. If you're ordering in the winter, you're probably going to have some cold damage. I mean, even if you were shipping from your own country and it was only in transit for a day or two, you would probably be dealing with cold damage. If you're worried about how the plants are going to be shipped out to you, reach out to your sellers and say, look, do you offer the option of me paying for a heat pack? Is that even an option? Or if you don't offer that, what else do you do? Again, Equigenera, I showed you in quite a few of my videos. It's usually kind of packed in with polystyrene just to make sure that it doesn't get that freezing cold. So, but cold damage is going to be something that potentially you're going to have to deal with. And I'll give you an example from my most recent purchase. This is the Anthurium argurostachium, and you can see that level there. That was cold damage. The leaf is still okay, but the people that have watched that unboxing, this plant had, I think, 6 or 7 leaves. I lost most of them during the beginning of that, during filming that video. And then I had 2 left, and then a day later I lost the other one. So it's on the single leaf club and it's looking a bit busted. But this is the reality of getting imports in, especially in the winter. Cold damage will happen, so be prepared for it. Another thing to remember is some plants just don't ship well. There's a lot of YouTube channels out there and a lot of videos that have kind of talked about certain things. So And I know like Kaylee Ellen is one of the people that usually talks about how things maybe don't ship as well and names specific plants because she's obviously got the Rare Plant Shop. But there's other YouTubers out there that have shared experiences. So for instance, let me give you an example. When I got my Philodendron luxurians, and let me show you. This is the Philodendron luxurians all potted up in semi-hydro, and surprisingly, it's doing well, which I was not expecting. So this kind of bucks the trend for me specifically as to what everybody else is experiencing. But that plant specifically, I've just put it back down again because it's heavy, is one that ships particularly badly. Philodendrons generally don't ship very well. Anthuriums ship better. But do some research, especially if the plant that you're looking for is one that other people have had imported before. See a few videos and see when they received it, how it was. Even if they don't specifically say this plant shipped badly, if you see 6 or 7 videos from different people on YouTube all saying that this plant came to me and it was mush, that gives you an idea that that plant might not ship particularly well. I'm not telling you not to buy it. What I'm saying is prepare for the worst. And if you have a good situation like mine, I'm surprised that it's doing so well straight out of the box because that hasn't been the experience of most people. Then at least you're prepared. A touch about 3 things in one. So we'll talk about price, the fact that some of these plants might be rare, and the fact that they are more available in larger size from imports. And it makes sense. That's part of the reason why you would do it. The price tends to be a hell of a lot cheaper than anything you would find in your own country. The size of the plants is considerably larger. Again, an example might be you might get a rooted cutting of, say, something like the luxurians that I just showed you a moment ago in the UK for, say, 50 or 80 pounds. And a fully grown plant with 3 or 4 or 5 leaves might be £200-300 domestically, but getting something like what I just showed you a moment ago with 3 leaves and a 4th one on the way in a relatively good condition, thankfully in my case, it's not always the case with that specific plant as I just said, is a hell of a lot cheaper because I think that was under £30 or $30 even. So it's a lot cheaper. However, there's all of these things. So part of the reason why they need to be bigger, and the example that I showed you a moment ago, so the Argyrostochium, it had loads of leaves, it had a semi-decent root system, which then means that the reason why a lot of the times people that export to you, that you're buying the imports from, will send you more mature plants with more leaves and a better root system is because there's more chance that even if things go wrong, you've not lost that entire plant completely. So don't get it in your head that I'm going to get a huge plant and it's going to stay huge. It might diminish in size and lose half of its foliage or more of its foliage or more of its roots, because the reason why they come over bigger, at least in my opinion, would be because it's an insurance policy from the actual sellers to make sure that you get something that survives. And that's the other thing as well. You're getting slightly rarer plants because you might not be able to find them. The thing is, I gave you an example of plants that you could find in your country. A lot of the times it might be plants that you can't find in your country. And that leads me on to the final topic that I want to cover today, is the kind of ethics of it all and poaching as well. So this is a very sticky subject and I've always kind of touched on it, but I don't go into too much detail because it is not my background, but I can talk to it because this is something you need to be aware of. And I know there's a few of us out there that might be looking into plant provenance, and I will let those people speak more to that element when they're kind of ready to, basically. But the thing is, some of these plants are rare, which means you need to be checking to see that the people that you're buying from are not poaching these plants from nature and they are growing them within their space and they're coming to you from an ethical place as well. It's always a good idea as well to kind of really finally kind of look into things that you might find online. Reach out to the resellers. A lot of the time, unfortunately, it's the human nature at some point, because sometimes if you search hard enough, you'll find something negative about every single seller out there. Whether or not this is based in truth or whether or not this is malicious information put out by potentially other sellers that are jealous of the success of another seller is a different story, and I'm not touching that with a barge pole. But do your own research, see what you feel comfortable with, and make sure that the plants that you're getting are not being taken away from their natural habitat, especially if these rare plants aren't just rare in the houseplant trade, which means they're just not as available to us, but if they're actually rare or even endangered in their natural habitats. You need to make sure that you're not contributing to them being removed from nature when they're already endangered, just so you've got a plant sitting in your home, which might not even do that well for you potentially if it needs very, very specific conditions. So all of those things are going to be things that you're going to be needing to look out for. In summary, some of my final thoughts. Prepare for the worst. If you get something better, good. Make sure that you're prepped if things go wrong. Expect that some things are going to go wrong. The weather might change. The courier might have delays. It might get caught in customs. There might be issues with the plants when they arrive to you. Be prepared. Have everything ready if you need to rehab. Make sure that you're rinsing pesticides and things like that off. And ultimately, enjoy the process. The fact that a lot of us have bought and bought and bought and bought again should tell you that it's not quite so scary. And when you do the first thing, it's like what I tell people sometimes with like tattooing. Everybody does that. It's really scary and painful, and I've got too many tattoos. But when they first get their first tattoo, they're just like, oh, this was not as bad as it was in my head. And all of a sudden they've got 20. It's very similar with the importing. For me, I held back for such a long time because it stressed me out, and it was that unknown element. But actually, after I did my first order, I'm just like, oh, this was easy, and it was okay, and it was manageable. Yes, I will be placing another order again and again and again and again, because no self-control. But yes, hopefully this has been useful. Let me know if some of this surprised you. Let us all know if you've had your own experiences with importing, and a lot of people who are probably watching this video might have never imported before, so tell them the good and the bad. And yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon, and I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.